Kazakhstan is among the top 10 leading countries in the world in terms of confirmed reserves of most types of minerals. To increase the competitiveness of the mining and metals sector in the coming years, measures are being taken to replenish the mineral resource base, simplify and automate business processes for subsoil users on a single platform, and deepen the processing of base metals to finished products. Learn about the National Program for the Intensification of State Geological Study, and the plans of the National Geological Survey to reduce investment risks and utilize new tools to attract investment. Gain insights into the transition to international reporting standards, and the creation of a transparent information system for easier access to geological data. Explore the state-initiated audit of subsoil use licenses, and the introduction of space monitoring to ensure transparent and fair market conditions for investors. Join us in shaping the future of Kazakhstan's geological industry by promoting sustainable development, innovation, and a favorable investment climate.
Hello once again, distinguished colleagues. We continue our forum, session number 2, priorities for the development of the geological industry in Kazakhstan. As you know, last year the concept for the geological industry development was adopted for 5 years. There were lots of disputes and debates about that. Many people tell that this concept didn't meet the expectations of others, of many people. But what is important to resolve in the geological industry by the sectoral industry, what is needed to be done to make institutional changes. And actually, this is a part of the concept I mentioned above: digitalization, a database, and all the other aspects that needs to be done. We have quite an impressive speakers. And the first floor I would like to give to Mr. Nikolai Radostovets, Executive Director, the Association of Mining and Metallurgical Enterprises of Kazakhstan. Actually, this is quite the powerful association. Even maybe they are too powerful, let's say. And Mr. Nikolai will talk about measures. Measures needs to be done to improve the investment climate in the mining sector of Kazakhstan, according to the view of the association. Hello, colleagues. Today is a very nice day. Independent, in spite of the bad weather, the climate here inside this room is very warm. As the Association of Mining and Metallurgical Enterprises of Kazakhstan, we include big and small companies, ERG, Kazatomprom, Kazminerals, and many, many others. They are the members of our association. Today, we have had a very constructive and productive dialogue in the first session. And to continue this constructive dialogue, let us express our views on certain things. 3 main issues, 3 main questions, key ones. First of all, one-stop shop to be established in the area of land subsoil use. The second one, amending the subsoil use code. And the third one, improving the taxation system for subsoil users. These are key aspects that are important to improve the investment climate in Kazakhstan, including the mining sector. Okay, one-stop shop. What do we mean by that? All over the world, the geological committees are working on digitalization of all these processes. That is correct, and we are supportive of these ideas. We are engaging in that, but the key message is that, unfortunately, recently, what we have the independent legislation developed by each sectoral ministry. It was mentioned about that, and these are separate pieces of legislation. But actually, the Ministry of Industry and Infrastructural Development cannot resolve all the issues related to the improving the investment climate in Kazakhstan. So we haven't resolved the issues about the land. We haven't resolved the issues related to the water code. It's not the responsibility of the Ministry of Industry solely. So that's why we need to have another approach. The Ministry of Industry should be the key ministry ministry in establishing the new legal framework for the mining sector. What we propose, actually, we need to simplify the system, because now, if we want to agree all the package of the documents, 4 ministries are involved in this agreement, and there is no agreement, no harmonization between all the ministries. Every ministry is protected by their own laws. In all the ministries, we have human factors involved that can have an impact on the period of time of the considering the licensing request. Lengthy procedures. And actually, it has an impact on the investment situation in Kazakhstan. The investor coming to Kazakhstan understands that there is no order here. The legislation framework is not complete. We have intersectoral barriers. The ministry says to the investor, we are not in charge of that. The other ministry is in charge of that. The other ministry is saying, you have to go to the other ministry. They're referring to each other. That's why I agree with Mr. Adilov. What we should do, we should not only increase the staffing in the Ministry of Industry, we have to review the legislation completely. So the only one ministry should be responsible for the mining sector, including the investment, and the only one ministry should be responsible for the investment, for the number of projects attracted to and implemented in the country. This should be the sole responsibility of one ministry for industry and the minister. That's why what is important, we believe it is important to set up intersectoral commission headed by the Prime Minister, and all the other ministries and agencies should be subordinate and accountable to this intersectoral commission. In the area of digitalization, it's quite simple. The Vice Minister, Mr. Sharhan, he was here, but this intersectoral commission should be responsible for the environmental specialist, agricultural specialist, and so on and so forth. And if someone submits a package of document for some decision, this intersectoral commission should include all the respective staff from all other ministries to make these decisions, so that it should be a kind of a one-stop shop for the investor to do something. Without that, we cannot go on further. So that's why when we are talking about the following issues, now we are going to submit amendments to the subsoil use code, and we are going to submit these amendments to the Parliament because we have to function and operate properly. We have some questions about the auctions, and we have to resolve these issues as fast as possible. By the end of this year, we have to amend the subsoil use code and also amend the environmental code, the land code, the water code, including the tax code. Why? Because we need to have a very logical system built, and maybe we have to attract experts to build that will help us to build this model or system. I hope very much that these consultants helping us to draft the environmental code, the subsoil use code, and others, hopefully they would understand that the codes they developed, so they are not enforcing properly because there are other pieces of legislation. Why the Kazakhstani rating is not so high, it's just because of this non-consistency of pieces of legislation. We have to get rid of the economic reviews or expertise. The second issue, improving taxation. What we can see now, we can see that many companies in Kazakhstan, so they are having non-budget payments. They are establishing different funds, building schools, planting trees, signing MOUs with Akims, having other financial burdens. But these are not taxes per se. But when we look at the tax coefficient burden, it's very low in the mining sector in comparison with other countries. So we have to shift to the international best practices in terms of taxation in the mining sector. And we are raising this issue in front of the government. We are in favor of the stable taxation system because recently the taxes are changing too fast and too often. And we have to get rid of all non-budget payments. It cannot be done during one day. We have to do it gradually, but at least we have to do that. Then the investor would have a clear picture what will be the real financial burden using this specific operational model. So with this regard, we would like to attract the attention of the business community to the following. We are drafting the new tax code. Now we have to use the system of the international taxation, so MAT and royalties. We shouldn't go back to the taxes for the for the exceeding revenues. So we need to provide stable taxation regime for the investors. We insist on the following: in the geological survey, we should remove VAT for these activities. Hopefully, during these 2 days, we hope the solution for these issues. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nikolai. Thank you for the constructive suggestions how we can improve the investment climate in our sector. The next floor I would like to give to Mr. Yerlan Akbarov, the chairman of the Committee of Geology under the Ministry of Industry. He will be talking about the concept of geological industry development that was adopted for the nearest 5 years. It was adopted at the end of the last year. Thank you. Hello, dear ladies and gentlemen. Hello, dear colleagues. On behalf of the Committee of Geology of Kazakhstan, I would like to welcome all the participants of the forum. According to the world trend, the increased consumption of the minerals give an impetus for geological surveys, and because we need to increase the extraction of the minerals. In Kazakhstan, there is a need to adopt systemic measures, and last year we adopted the concept for the geological industry development. In the concept, we have identified 3 KPIs, 4 areas, 8 outstanding activities and other 36 activities or measures. This is the first the first area of the force is the improving the efficiency of the geological surveys for the minerals and the replenishing of the mineral and raw base. What do we mean by that? So the we are shifting now for the scale of 50,000, and in this shifting, in this transition, we would be implementing the new methods for exploration, and also will be implementing new technologies. Also, will be using airborne geophysics and airborne imaging. And since we are increasing the scale of the survey, we will improve the efficiency of that. So in order to replenish the mineral base, what we are doing, we are conducting surveys for the rare earth metals. The second area is information and digitalization. As you know, unfortunately, all the data all the data that we accumulated during the Soviet Union time, all this geological data are on papers, but even if we provide paper data, so it's very costly. So that's why we, in our concept, we will have this second area, informatization and digitalization of geological reports. In this second area of the concept, we have a pilot. We have implemented KazNedra platform. It's kazminerals.kz.gov. 30,000 geological reports have been downloaded already to this platform. It's in a pilot mode now, but by end of May, it will be fully fledged platform. And by the end of the year, we have 55,000 geological reports, and all of them will have been downloaded to this portal.
And third one, scientific research and provision with the staff. To improve the efficiency of geological surveying, we are increasing the volume jointly with scientific research institutions and universities, including Satpayev Geology Institute, Polytechnical University, all leading universities of the Republic of Kazakhstan, as well as provision with the staff. Unfortunately, in the most recent years, we observed a decrease in training geological staff. We feel deficient, a lack of geologists, and as you may know, and especially we do not have properly replenishment of raw material resources and the increase, but unfortunately this work can be done only by geologists. So in this concept, we have a special vision, we have special areas that would allow us to ensure training and education of the staff, as well as providing places and practice for the students and supporting young specialists and to promote geological profession. We receive for this purpose support from Just Geologists Association. The third one is development of infrastructure in geological sector. In this regard, we can see the construction of geological hubs. These geological hubs would allow construction of core storages and information storages, and it also will help us to repair 4 core storages all over Kazakhstan. Unfortunately, all core storages are filled, and we have some problems with storing of core materials. To improve the efficiency of geological surveying of subsoil and to replenish raw materials base, we are transferring to the mapping in the scale of 1 to 50,000, and also plan to work close to monotowns. Now we have 2 programs for monotowns development, including the operations related to rare earth metals. The second approach is informatization and digitalization. I have already mentioned. What are the expected outcomes? The level of provision of open access in digital form will be 100% by 2025. What do we expect from implementation of this concept? First of all, it is a uniform information. The platforms with open access to geological information, uniform cadastre of subsoil, modern infrastructure for storage of geological materials, digitalized primary and secondary geological information, update and addition of regulatory framework, improvement of efficiency of mapping of the country's territory, and improvement of the level of qualification of the specialists in the geology sector. That is all with me. If you have any questions, you are welcome to ask them. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. The next presenter is Zhanat Karibayev. Zhanat Karibayev-Karbekovich, the head of the board of last year established National Geological Service. In accordance with the concept, the key burden of its implementation falls mostly on this National Geological Surveying Service. And now let us listen what the work is going to be done and what the other works that are being done. Thank you, Timur. Good morning, distinguished colleagues. Let me welcome you at this conference. And I would like to tell you that what has been done and what is planned to be done by National Geological Service. Within the address of the head of the state to the nation on update of establishment of National Geological Service, the Republic of Kazakhstan, we have taken certain efforts of lawmaking and organizational nature. So at the Republican Center of Geological Information, Kazakh on the 15th of June 2022, we have registered of National Geological Service as a joint stock company. Here on this slide, you may see the key activities of the National Geological Service, which will become the center of competence and that will combine the following tasks and areas. First of all, it is science and interaction with the profiling universities of the country so as to provide scientific substantiation of geological survey of subsoil, including geological support and innovative approaches. New technologies, application of cutting-edge technologies to recover difficult to extract resources, digitalization information system, and experience change with big successful companies, reaching out special work in establishment of programs and strategies for geological study of subsoil, servicing activities, interpretation of geological geophysical information, lab researches, issue of geological reports on core storages to ensure preservance of primary geological information laboratories with international accreditations for high-quality researches, found storages for geological information and its process and systematization, monitoring compliance of the code in terms of accounting, storage, and preservation, and reliability of geological information based on its availability in online mode database. Automation of all business processes at uniform platform mineral.kz, and also the program is aimed to implement governmental policy in the sphere of rational management of subsoil and replenishment of information base of the Republic of Kazakhstan. This year we're dealing with the area of the territory of Kazakhstan, 2,700 square kilometers. The area covered for exploration and mining is 1914 square kilometers. All territory are open for subsoil use rights. And now National Geological Service provides special connection of secondary geological report and maps, and also the update of the data on subsoil users at interactive map. The next area is science. Important area of scientific research is establishment of theoretical base of development of geological sector based on current achievements. The sun aimed to resolve the task on replenishment of mineral base of the country, development of efficient methods in prospecting of mineral deposits, development and improvement of new technologies, and development of the recommendations for governmental institutions and for investors and subsoil users. At the same time, the leading role is given to National Geological Service that has to become a flagship authority and connect scientific research organization, representative of science for the development of geological science and its results, implementation and practice. We have to ensure establishment and implementation of geological policy in the sphere of subsoil survey and replenishment of mineral base. First of all, it is analysis of material, strategic planning of geological works, modern methods and technologies, and new deposits prospecting. Geological and geoeconomical forecast is the development of raw material based on the country, and identification of prospect area for geological work and geological study of subsoil paid by the budget. The next area is modern technologies and service. Now we have several problems, which is outdated equipment, which is non-compliant with international standards. Geological information is stored on paper carriers and magnetic carriers. We don't have modern digital information and appropriate software for working with digital data. For these purposes, National Geological Service will provide procurement of modern equipment and software. Now we are also taking efforts to develop cooperation with geological companies and National Geological Services of Finland, Poland, UK, and so on. Also, we are cooperating with foreign and local companies like Catalyst, Radars, Kazakhstan, Kazink, ERG, Kazmunagas, and so on. Development of the infrastructure for geological sector, as I have already mentioned, we plan construction of modern storage facilities that will use digital system of movement of geological data that will be equipped with modern system of storage and safety. Also, we plan to establish a central processing of geological data in accordance with international standards with the use of modern equipment and software. Within the framework of the national project, we have budget for construction, and we plan that will construct the building 2024, 2025. Now we are searching for the area for this facility in Astana, and also plan to have a core storage that would ensure preservation of the most important source of geological information as cores and samples. We plan to construct 2 core storages and repair 4 current core storages, and also we have budget for that. A uniform platform of mineral.gov.kz. My colleague will be talking more about this platform from Kazakhstan, Garage Sapari, but I'll touch it upon. During this year, we have been filling the system with geological reports and secondary geological information. We have loaded down 30,000 reports. This year, we are also working on the loading of the reports into the system. We plan that 24,000 reports will be loaded into the system this year. Also, we are involved in digitalization of primary geological information and recording of magnetic carriers of the information to digital format. This system will be providing an opportunity for single window principle for investors in subsoil use, and it will be also used for providing geological information online, accounting of subsoil use rights and reporting, and online monitoring for implementation of the commitments of subsoil users. And briefly, that is all, and thank you very much for your attention. Shakir, thank you very much. And now we are going to provide the floor to representative of Kazakhstan's Garage Sapari, a subsidiary company of the Ministry of Digital Development, which is now responsible for implementation of the information platform. City Minerals.gov.kz, which is Kazakhstan, is waiting for already 13 years, if I'm not mistaken. Good afternoon, distinguished participants of the forum. I would like to introduce you a uniform platform of subsoil users. All of you are aware, and everybody is waiting for this platform. The head of the state several times raised attention on the need in digitalization in the sector. Since last year, we're implementing a project called Subsoil, and within this project, we have established this platform at minerals.gov.kz. And now I would like to talk about the content and the functions of this platform. It is important to note that authorization is done in 2 stages. First, you can get registered using your email, and you will be able to have an access to interactive map to submit application to competent authority. You'll have to use a digital signature to get your authorization. Thereafter, we see the main screen, and then we have to move to the interactive map, and I'll show you all the steps. The interactive map is a digital map where we have collected all available data for the analysis of the location and for decision making for selected blocks or territories. The first thing you can see is a legend, and you'll see more details. And also the next step is blocks for consideration, and you can see them and the information, the breakdown of blocks which are available for application or where applications for exploration or mining are submitted, the territory which is available for mining application submission. The next level is a map of studies. Here on this map, you can see 30,000 digital secondary reports that have been loaded on the web portal. Now these objects are broken down by geometry, and if you drill down, you'll see the breakdown by the types of rocks like prospecting, hydrogeology, hydrochemistry, geology surveys,
and also engineering geology. If you push this site, if you push certain site or area, you will be able to see the list of the reports available for this area, for this site. And also you can look at these reports, look at the data of this report, and you will be able to see the number of the report, the author of the report, the year of conducting the survey, and also there is a function, review or download the report. The function, download function, is restricted yet because we haven't resolved the legal aspects yet, but the download function is there. We will just activate it when the legal issues are resolved. The next block, this is the map of layers, territory that are limited for mining operations. We broke them down according to the code. Item 25 of the subsoil use code. So this article came into force 1st of January, and now when the license is issued, the authorized body is relying on this data. So the first item is the defense and security lands. The second item here here is the settlements. For your convenience, you have the borders of the settlements, but also the buffer zone from the settlement, 1,000 meters according to the land code. So that's why you will be able to see whether your block is overlapping with the buffer zone of the settlement, and then you can make your decisions. Hydrotechnical objects, facilities, the same buffer zone, 400 meters for these hydro facilities. This is the buffer zone for all the hydrotechnical facilities. Item number 4, here there is the information about the water fund lands, including lakes and rivers themselves, but also including the water protection areas along these water reservoirs. It's a very important information because there are certain limitations in using these areas. So the contours of the fields and deposits. Item 6 here. We can have the data on the cemeteries and animal barrier sites and also buffer zones for these sites. You can see them on the map. Most of this data were not available. They were available, but in different places. Nobody could check for them. Item number 7. This is the data. This is the data about the third parties. This is the data from the informational system on land cadastre. Also, here we include unregistered agri-lands. These are agri-lands used for planting, processing, and so on and so forth, but there is no data about that land. Item number 9, here you can find the information about the utility lines, roads, so motor roads, railroads, gas pipelines, electrical lines, and so on and so forth. Item number 9. What is there? Okay, here we have another territories, and item number 9, these are pieces of land that the usage of which are limited because of other pieces of legislation, including cultural areas and so on and so forth. Why Kazakhstan, Gharush Sapari, we are specializing in the space technologies, but why we start to digitalize subsoil use approaches? Why? Because for the last several years we are conducting land areas, including agricultural lands, environmental protected areas, settlements, and so forth. We are having images for all these territories, so that's why we have acquired and accumulated quite a large database on all these territories. That's why we collected all this data and now is providing all this data. We are providing all this data for utilization. This is the exploration request. Here you can have the map for this request. So green areas, these are the areas available for exploration. Yellow ones, these are the areas that we have requests already for, and the red one, occupied territories. You can pick up the area, and when you push the button, check the selected area, then all the data regarding the area, number of blocks, and so on and so forth, all this data will be calculated automatically, and also automatically overlays and restrictions will be automatically checked. meaning that by picking up the block, you will be able to see the restrictions for your block that you are going to submit for exploration request, and then you can make the decision. It doesn't mean that you cannot submit the request for exploration for this area. But what it means that if there are certain restrictions, it will have an impact on making the decisions by the respective authority. And then you can change your blocks, your areas, and submit another request. Then you attach all the documents and then send the request for consideration. And after the consideration, the Department for Subsoil Use will ask for bank guarantee and then issue license for you, either online or you will get the rejection on this platform also. You can see the list of all the documents compiled by the authorized body. And then if there is a license is granted, you can find it here. But if there is a rejection, you can find it also in this attachment. And all the documents developed by the authorized body. That's all I can show you during the time I was allocated for my speech. If there are any further questions, yeah, you are welcome. I have a question. On behalf of the industry, let me ask this question. The date of launching this platform is May next month. Now you have certain functions: map, geological data, and submitting the request. But does it mean that we can have one platform of interactions like subsoil user and then the ministry, and maybe environmental permits will be also on this platform, tax issues will be joining to this platform? When do you think we can have this comprehensive platform, including all the aspects? Okay, you have these basic functions. What's next? Yes, we have staged approach, gradual approach for this platform. We have the plan together with the Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Energy. We have the roadmap, what we should do next. The next stage is reporting. Okay, the year when everything will be finished. The implementation of the next steps, there will be implementation of such functions. We plan to pilot, to test next functions in September, and starting next year, beginning of next year, we will launch all these functions after the pilot at the end of this year. Thank you. Colleagues, next speaker is Hairullah Aben, the principal consultant of CSS Global. He will be talking about the benefits of transition to the new mining code. It will be, it's either subsoil code or Kazakh. Are we talking about Kazakh? Yes, Kazakh. Okay, thank you. Hello, colleagues. I will be talking about the benefits of transition to the new standards, about the benefits that we can feel now already because of this transition to Kazakh. And also I will be talking about the next steps, and also I will be talking about the further benefits. As you are well aware, Kazakhstan is shifting to Kazakh code. It's part of the family codes of family codes CRISCA, including such extracting countries as Australia, Brazil, Canada, Chile, and so on and so forth. The main goal of CRISCA codes are to facilitate the implementation of the best practices. Kazakhstan, as we are all aware, we we inherited standards from the Soviet Union. They were quite okay when the government owned all the assets, but in the time of the market economy, it's not the most efficient approach. In particular, it's not efficient to attract in attracting investors. Talking about the benefits of the transition to KazRC, the first one, the most important one, why we are shifting to the international standards. First of all, it ensures transparency and independence of the reporting of the competent authorities. Why? Because potential investors, they are relying on the independent views of the consultants, and they are looking, of course, at the figures. Those figures of the resources and reserves, these are the opinions of the consultants. We, as the consultants, we are facing this challenge. During this transition period, there is lack of understanding in this regard, but gradually, slowly, we can feel that there are improvements going on. All KRISKA standards, they are a bit different, but in general, the approach to calculating resources and converting them into the reserves is quite a standard approach of to calculate the resources and reserves. But it's very important to mention that new standards for the reporting, they are more clear for the investors because they are working in most of the instructing countries, and also one of the criteria is that Kazakhstan was included in the mining investment attractiveness index with the better indicator. Talking about direct benefits of transition to international standards, there are other factors benefiting this transition, and some of these factors should become the next steps. Should be next steps to improve the investment climate in this sector. We have these factors in Kazakhstan. For example, the quality of the workforce. We know that in Kazakhstan we have quite a qualified engineering staff and so on and so forth. But in this presentation, mostly I will be talking mostly about the tax regime and its stability. Colleagues mentioned about that briefly. Let me talk about that in details. We have the extraction tax in Kazakhstan. It has been operating for quite long already. It is being paid from the balance of metals. And what is the important next steps when we are shifting to the new international standards, it will be important to shift to royalty. Royalty is more understandable, more transparent tax. Besides this shift, what is important here is that it ensures this. What is most important is to ensure the stability of the taxation in the country, because there was the increase of the extraction tax for some of the metals up to 50%. It's not a stable approach. And that's why we have to understand that if you're talking about stability, this is the only advantage here is that with the increase of the taxes, we are increasing the revenues to the budget. Most probably by the end of this year, we have the increased revenues to the budget, but it's in short term. But if you're talking about long-term perspectives, maybe these increased extraction taxes, it's another good idea. Talking about the extraction tax in Kazakhstan and the royalty in West Australia, this is a comparison here. You are aware that in Western Australia, this is the leading country in terms of the development of the mining sector all over the world, and the mining sector I think comprises about 60% of the GDP of the country. What are the main differences between the extraction tax and royalties? The royalty rates were approved in 81 and they are still stable.
The second, rates in Australia are equal for all the types of metals, but at the same time they differ depending on the level of processing. In particular, on this slide, you may see that while selling the ore from Australia, the rate of 75% royalty should be paid, and if the concentrate is sold, which makes Australian companies is 5%, which is much lower than new rates of met tax in Kazakhstan, and when metal is sold, then only 2.5% are paid. And if you have a look at this slide, you may make a conclusion that met tax in Kazakhstan are much higher than in Australia. And again, I will repeat. Increase of met tax this year is a short-term solution that will provide a short-term effect. For a longer-term prospect, we have to focus on more stable taxes so as to attract more investors. And as a conclusion, I would like to mention maybe there is no need creating something new if we're talking about taxation. Maybe we should focus on experience of the countries having developed mining sector and experience in attracting investments, for instance, in Australia, as I have given you in my example. And here's the key aspects are differentiate loyalty in terms of level of processing. They may stimulate deeper processing stages. And if we think for a longer term, then we have to choose something between stick and carrot, and we have to work with investors in terms of the attracting and stimulating them so they have good reasons for constructing plants and factories, and that would provide better multiplication effects, and it will be better than thinking on direct inflows of metal extraction, mineral extraction tax into the budget. And also we have to think about some guaranteed and fixed interest rates so as to demonstrate taxation and legislative stability in the country. On top of that, royalty would help us to avoid non-compliance that many of the colleagues are aware. It happens that we see deviation between the balance metal and sold metal. And I think with the transition to royalty, we'll reach some transparency decisions. Last point, with the increase of MET tax rate, the taxes are growing for all the companies which profitability rate is less than 5%. And I think here we have to think about more transparent solution because we know what the result could be. Thank you very much. That's all with me. Thank you, Carola. Actually, the transition to international standards, KRIRSCA, is implemented in Kazakhstan since 2016. The flagship for that was the Committee of Geology. And in my opinion, actually, we have nothing to boast, as we have been discussing this transition for 7 years already, and it does not inspire any confidence that we will be capable to do that. Carola, could you please tell us would you assess the risks that we will not be capable to transferred to international standards at the end of the day. And we will have parallel function of JKZ. This is what had happened in Russian Federation when they also decided to do this transition. Maybe in general about this sector, I will not be capable to make any conclusions, but looking from the eyes of the companies, I can tell you that many subsoil users for many years in Kazakhstan and Russia and CIS country are leading so-called double accounting. They count reserves based on international standards to get investments, but at the same time, they are reporting on JKZ. And sometimes we see deviations and problems because of this double accounting. And in terms of the transition to international standards, I believe that Kazakhstan has some competitive advantage if we are compared with the neighboring countries, as Kazakhstan actually appeared to be more progressive and more prepared to transitions to changes. And if we make a step back and forget about the work that has been done, I believe it will not be very promising for the investors. Thank you very much for your presentation. The next, I would like to provide the floor to Georgie, who is a participant of the group on transition to Kazakhstan. And we expect that Georgie Freisman will talk about all the risks and barriers and all the difficulties that we may face during this transition. We have met a lot of, and we had a lot of discussions at different levels. Please, the floor is yours, George. Good morning, distinguished participants of the forum. Harullah has made an general overview, but I'll try to briefly report of how it is really happening in practice. As Timur has mentioned, a small group of enthusiasts, about 20 persons, just a known initiative, is doing this work for 8 years already. Current status of implementation you may see on the first slide. This process has started already 11 years ago in 2012, and then step by step, the majority of you have an idea what the steps were. The key element was that 74 steps out of 100 steps of the nation program provided for transition to CRISCA, and at that time the process became more active. So the condition and public association of professional experts of subsoil who are doing this work is as follows. As for now, 325 members of PANEN, the specialists of mining and metallurgy sector of Kazakhstan, as we may see on this diagram, the majority of them, actually 50% of them, were localized at Almaty, as the offices of most companies are located at Almaty. And we also see their presence in almost all regions in Kazakhstan, to some extent. Competent authorities of PANEN having the right to prepare the reports on Kazakh code. Now their list consists of 106 persons, 106 experts. These are the persons who, after the introduction in force of subsoil use code, have the right to prepare the reports as for those reports. In terms of their numbers of last year, the Committee of Geology received 80 reports on 22 solid minerals. During this period, we managed to understand what are the deficiencies, happens with the law, Actually, insufficient network of testing, non-compliant methodology, which is not compliant with the best global practice, insufficient quality of the works which are related to the same series. And at the level of implementation, we are also observing this best global practice on quality control. A use of historic data that in the majority of cases are of poor quality. And this data cannot be directly used without confirmation work. We cannot use them and take them from historic reports and transfer directly to Kazakhstan reports. And the volumes of technical surveys are not sufficient. So these are the key gaps. And the specialists in mining sector present here have very good understanding of them, as terms geotechnics and geomechanics appeared not long ago. So when we started reassessing the objects, as we got the specialists and this specialization, and now we feel significant lack of the specialist. But at the same time, we are working in a significant rush, and this is a permanent condition for us. Last year, we have done a significant breakthrough. We developed a methodological guidelines on development of Kazakhstan report together with 10 annexes containing recommendations on different types of works. We studied the entire experience present in KRISKA system, and we do not find something similar, and we can be to a certain extent proud that we are leaders in of this kind of works. As in KRISK system, we got the first methodological document on application of KRISKA standard, as Kazakhstan has been done based on the matrix of this committee, and it is in principle, it is applicable to all types of the reports of KRISKA. Out of doubt, I would like to mention it once more. Without the support of the country's leadership, nothing would happen in this regard. And the most recent decree of the president, dated 13 September 2021, confirms that we have to resolve the task of transition to international standards. On this slide, you may see the discussions on this topic. Actually, we do not have the subject for this discussion. Since the very beginning, as a Committee of State Revenues is asking how we are going to produce taxation and so on and so forth. But at the same time, everything ends up only with discussions until this moment. On this slide, this presentation will be available for you. You just take it and see. Together with leading mining engineers and geologists of mining companies, we have established the schemes that demonstrate only one thing. There is no difference which standards should be used for assessment. So we just care on each other when we are saying we are leaving JKZ and turn into international standards, and that may lead to chaos. Absolutely, these statements are not well grounded. And together with the Committee of Geology and together with the with the presidential administration, we have prepared 3 roadmaps. So we have established 3 working groups that I hope to start the active work in the nearest future, so as we could completely transferred to CRISCA standards in accordance with the subsoil use code. So this is the first working group. The second working group will work separately on the topic of state geological survey of subsoil, because it is an element of sectoral activity, and this element should be also inbuilt into the system of global best practices, and also we should consider Kazakhstan code at the same time. And a separate issue is a third working group on OP, which represents a local topic that must be included in some explanation Kazakhstan code.
And several words about risks. If today, if we announce after the work that have been done for 11 years, if we announce today that let us prolong this transition period, again, there are such options and they are being discussed, but again, this is the worst case scenario. So at least we shouldn't have even started that, because now it's kind of a trying to sit at two chairs. The fact that we had Gekazes system, it was great in the economic, in the planned economy, but it's already past. It's already in the past. Just in the lower part, you can see by periods, the breakdown by periods. This is the timeline of the reduction of the staff of Geological Committee. In 1993, this committee, GKZ, was established. Up to 1998, before relocated from Almaty, this committee was under the Ministry of Ecology and Mineral Resources. They were relocated to Kokshetau. There were 40 people. But the level was quite high, distinguished colleagues of this staff. The head of the department was the person, well-known person, Mr. Tapuyev Alexei. He is the first deputy chairman of the committee. So he is an expert from the Soviet Union time. He was protecting tens and tens of reports in Moscow. The next deputy for carbon hydrates, Mr. Saken Yerzhanovich. He was the director of the institute in Atarao. He was protecting the reserves of tens and tens of deposits in the Soviet Union times, and so on and so forth. And you will be able to see the names if you want to find. The committee moved to Kokshetau, so all these distinguished and people, they remained in Almaty, and then the decision was made to reduce the staffing. And as of now, we have just 9 people in GKZ, and they are the members of this committee. Haven't developed even one report using the standards. Georgi, you're out of time. Yes, thank you. And I have one question, but please be frank in answering this question. In your opinion, what is the most barrier, impediment to finalize the implementation of CRISCA and eliminating GKZ? This is the first question. The second one, we are meeting at different working groups meetings at different levels. Please, can you tell us introduction of CRISCA, whether it will result into the selective and barbarian extraction? Okay. Let me start with the last question. If it is like that, then the leading mining companies and world mining countries with developed mining industry, they would be somewhere at the back of the economy. We are following the developed, advanced countries. Those countries, they are using this system for quite a long time. That system ensures the optimal conditions for the mining industry and mining enterprises in the conditions of the market economy. If we want to have the successful and complete transition to KRISKA, not to what is needed, KazRC and our panel of experts, they should be in consolidation in line with the Geological Committee and with the Ministry of Investment and Infrastructural Development, as it was at the real beginning. It was in the beginning. But then there was a series of reorganizations, and it impeded the process. Yes, Mr. Georgi, it's very important, but we are running out of time, and we will be able to ask questions later, okay? Colleagues, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, friend, Mr. Almat Daumov. He is the partner from the Grata International Law Firm. Almat is practicing in the mining sector for a long time. He is not just a lawyer, he is a practicing subsoil user as well. Almat, the floor is yours. Thank you, Timur. I'm welcoming all the delegates of the forum. My first slide, what we have discussed last year at MINEX 2022. It was my slide from my last year presentations. Just to brief you, what has changed? The first issue, land disputes of subsoil users with agri users and so on and so forth. This dispute is still valid while we are shifting from exploration to extraction. Both of the ministries, the Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Agriculture, they believe that this is a deadlock and cannot be resolved in the legal environment. Everyone thought that we need to change the legislation to that, but what we did, we reviewed the legislation, we reviewed all the litigations when the subsoil users getting the contractual license for extraction coming to Akimat saying that I couldn't agree with the land user. I cannot buy over the land rights of this landowner. Some Akimats, they were taking over this land, but the courts in these cases, these refusals were not legal, meaning that maybe, yes, some fine-tuning of the legislation is needed, but we do not need to change the legislation because the enforcement practice of Kazakhstan shows that we can resolve these issues in courts quite easily. Why I'm talking about that? The subsoil users should be persistent on that because the landowners sometimes they are exaggerating their land rights. We can reimburse the direct losses, we can reimburse the lost revenues, but when the land users are starting to talk, let's calculate how much you will earn by the extraction of the minerals, trying to calculate the compensation with this approach, it's exaggeration, and that's why the industry should be persistent, not allowing that to happen. The second one, very relevant for many of the subsoil users, and it's relevant for even now, if you have a big exploration area and you are shifting to extraction, and the field is comprised of several sites, and technically it's difficult to merge them in one license area. The current legislation says one license, one lot. It means that in one field, for one field, you have to get 3 or 4 licenses. It's okay from the terms of legislation, but it's not correct from terms of the taxation, because you have to have a separate accounting, and it means that you are going to have one project, but you're going to have 3, 4, 5 accounts, and it's difficult to calculate expenditures. So it's one expenditure is for services and so on and so forth, but you have to divide them by different projects. It's not an option. In the previous regime, it was possible. There is a license, and you can have 3 or 2 lots or sites, or we need to change the tax legislation. There will be a separate slide about the mineral extraction tax rates increase. Nothing changed here. About the insurance, the Vice Minister, Mr. Iran, mentioned that, and hopefully it will be resolved. Next, what we would like to see, how we can increase the interest for exploration. So how to attract financing at the early stages. We are talking about junior companies. They are changing the structures, not because they want that, because they are extracting investors. That's why we need to simplify the permit regime, maybe to shift to the notification approach. If we are talking about just exploration license, what are the issues? In 90% of the cases, there are no issues for the national security here. That's why it can be an option here. The subsoil users can change that, and just to notify the governmental bodies that beneficiaries has changed during the exploration. The second one, there is a special purpose acquisition company, for example, existing in Australia, and the current shareholders of the project, they wanted to sell control to this SPAC, like in Australia, and the SPAC want to issue shares, and the law says so that the one that acquires the control, the question is, the Australian company is not having control over Kazakhstani assets. Can this company get the permission for IPO? Kazakhstani legislation is not clear about that. So maybe the series of consecutive actions can be approved, and maybe if the ministry will have less conservative approach, then we'll be able to resolve this problem. Restructuring, there can be such a situation. Subsoil users, 80 by 20 or 70 by 30, we have 2 participants. They want to change the structure, but the control will be the same. For example, one of the participants changing the jurisdiction, but the law is quite clear about that. But here we need to have the vision, like in anti-monopoly law. If the shares are the same, we should allow the subsoil users to change the corporate structure and just to notify the ministry about that. The second, 2 aspects, the stability of the tax policy. Any changes related to the increase of the taxes should be done using the procedure of reviewing of the impact of these amendments on the investments. The investors should tell, we had this financial model. If you increase the tax rate, we will change the financial model. It will kill our project. The project will not be profitable anymore. We will not be able to financing at the stock exchanges, and the government should take into account. We have IRV, regulatory impact assessment, and the same we have to introduce for taxes. Maybe we need to to eliminate VAT for the implementation of the geological exploration services, maybe introduce royalty instead of MET, and if we come back to it would be great, as we had it before 2009. And the principle in the work of all the governmental bodies, I'm talking about tax authorities, environmental authorities, they all need to implement the principle of protection of the investments and promotion of the investment in the work of any investor. Governmental bodies should be working based on this principle when they are talking to the investors. On this slide, you can see the comparative analysis of MET rates. In Kazakhstan, the highest rate you can see here. Two aspects. Actually, the increased MET rate will lead to the company making the decision, the following decision. Some company were extracting, and for example, they were extracting gold, but if the MET rates are to be increased, then the companies, extracting companies, will increase their ratios of the extracted minerals, like gold, for example, and 3 or 4 grams will remain in the ore because the companies will not extract it because of the increased rates. And the junior companies will suffer as well. For example, Raygorodok and the Komarovskaya fields. These are the projects. They started as oxide projects, but if at those times there would not be a balanced taxation, these companies implemented these big projects, they would not be able to implement those projects. And maybe this kind of projects would be killed in the future. This is an interesting project, but thanks to proper taxation at those times, could be implemented and could become a bigger project. But by using exceeding tax rates, we would be killing your junior companies, and they will not be implementing big projects.
Here, as the Vice Minister of Industry explains, that changes are planned, and the proposal is to create insurance related to the planned geological exploration. For instance, 2 blocks are taken, and for the first year, the company does only geophysics. No works are done on site, and in a year, out of 200 blocks, 120 will be returned, and only 8 blocks will be remained with the company. So for the 120 blocks, no operation carried out, and why insurance is taken, because during first year of geology, no physical works on site are carried out, and the risk of liquidation or non-liquidation of subsoil use does not exist. So if you have any questions, you are welcome to ask them. Thank you, Almat. Very interesting suggestions. Some of them may raise discussions. With 20 persons in subsoil department, one can hardly expect the attention on what kind of geological exploration is carried out as to consider during insurance. And for us, it is clear that actually taxes is a headache, not in the sense of taxation rate, but in the sense of approaches. The sectoral legislation is subjected to a tax policy, to methodology, and what Almas was talking about. Separate taxation accounting will result into the need to reconsider the principle one license means one block. But why sectoral legislation should be subjected to taxation? Maybe it is the taxation law that should serve the sectoral law. This problem has been existing for 30 years, actually, colleagues, and I would like to provide the final floor to Aybar Daoud, of the chair of a board of association of a small business at Tauken, Kazakhstan Association. I am from the Association of Small and Medium-Sized Businesses in the Mining Sector, Tauken, Kazakhstan. to your attention, I would like to provide my presentation on the place and role of junior companies in the subsoil use in Kazakhstan. In the condition of the reduction of big deposits in Kazakhstan, it is critically important to establish a favorable environment for development of junior market, which activity should allow to replenish mineral resources of the country on the discovery of the new deposits. Juniors are small and medium-sized companies. They are more mobile than the bigger businesses. It would allow them to attract risky capital. Their flexibility allows junior companies to ensure the coverage, geological exploration coverage in the territories when no geological exploration has been carried out. In the most recent 10 years, 63% of all discoveries of minerals in Western countries have been made by juniors. This is what the report of Ernst & Young says on encouraging development of mining sector. On top of discoveries, total amount of investments, almost 2/3 of the amounts is established by junior company. This is also from the same report. These are the key statements that 2/3 of new discoveries, including big deposits, and 2/3 of investments in the most advanced countries are done by junior companies. On top of that, an important statement has been made by the president at the session of newly elected parliament. So the support. And his statement, he said, stressed the need to support medium-sized and small businesses. If we are talking about subsoil use and medium-sized and small companies, most of them are juniors. Our proposals on support to junior companies include the ones that you may see on the slide. First of all, it's a MET tax, the decrease ratio of 0.5 rate should be applied to MET tax. In this sector, in subsoil use, despite that the country has a general line to support SMEs. In mining sector, we do not have any preferences for small and medium-sized businesses. The second proposal is to allow to provide 1% of revenues should be used for funding of geological works. And the third proposal, SMEs, subsoil users should be allowed to a system of public finances through the Fund of Support of Small and Medium-Sized Businesses, or DAMU Fund. So this is what I would like to report. In general, I would like to mention that Tolkien Kazakhstan Association was established to protect the interests of small and medium-sized businesses in mining sector. Here, I would like to note that in the most recent years, it happens that we have a general opinion that mining sector is represented by big companies, big deposits, but unfortunately, the voice of SMEs is very low. So using the chance to speak at this platform, I encourage SMEs to become the members of our association. Thank you very much. I have one rhetoric question to you. Movement of juniors in Kazakhstan, it got its push with the adoption of the subsoil use code. And in different platforms, junior business is somehow discussed from different point of view, and some ethic slogans are raised with regard of SME. Are juniors speculating companies or who are they? It's a very interesting question. You can ask the same question with regard of big businesses. You know, big businesses can be bought and sold as small companies. Their shareholders are changing. Again, it is the issue of business. And the term speculation, again, we are in business to get profits. I would not say so, that they're speculative. The problem is that junior business, due to very poor understanding of the sense of the junior business, actually at different platforms, some negative connotation is tried to be prescribed to junior companies, which comes from our Soviet past, like speculators, commercials. So this connotation is very negative. And you see, you were right to mention that bigger business and any business, it's just entrepreneurship. Thank you. Colleagues, we almost have run out of time for Q&A session. I would like to hear one very important question from the audience. Unfortunately, it will be only one question, and then Yerike will give a couple comments about. So, thank you. Ajli Kanza, rating exploration Kazakhstan. I have a question to Zhanat Karibayev. You mentioned about establishment of national data bank, digitalization of historic geological reports. It's great, useful, and interesting. But my question is, how the full package of information is provided nowadays? What do I mean? The full package information, raster and vector data, GIS database. Why I have this question? Because being an officer of a company, I used to participate in big projects as DP 100 and replenishment of mineral resources based of Kazakhstan. They were budget-paid projects, and we have prepared the reports in three formats: a text, a raster data, JPEGs, and vector data. But nowadays, we cannot get this information. When we address to archives, we are said that vector data are not available. If we have the right to get this information and how this information is being stored. Thank you for your question. As you know, secondary geological information, I mean historical information that has been collected in the period prior to the independence of Kazakhstan, it has been scanned as a picture in TIFF. And we provide it nowadays in digital format, and we record it on particular carriers as a scanned materials. The materials of a modern period, yes, we have a requirement that they should be submitted both in scanned form and as an original through particular software using which they have been prepared. Together with the association, we are developing uniform standards of reporting that will be loaded down into a system called mineral.gov.kz. But in your application, you have to specify in which form, in which format you need a particular information. If it is available in a vector format, you will be provided. But you can also order a service for us to process this information and provide it to you in a form that you need. And we can also do this work for you. And now we mentioned that in our application, we specified that we need a vector data. Colleagues, I would like to apologize. You see, this is a session of Q&As, but not tete-a-tete discussions, but you can resolve your issue offline and get necessary clarifications later. Now I would like to close the session, but before that I'll provide the chair of the Committee of Geology. But what I would like to note, I hope that next year we will be in a situation when no one of you will have to address the National Geological Service. You'll get to the website and you'll receive all geological information, and all of it will be loaded and scanned up to the most recent year. I hope it to happen. Iraqi, the floor is yours. Thank you. I hope so. Colleagues, today we received a lot of complaints against governmental agencies, and I could share it. And there were a lot of and also there were also complaining about JKZ and KZRC methodologies. But this is a difference in categorization. And in the most recent time, with the adoption of the latest code, as you may know, all the minerals are the property of a nation. And the government is managing this property, and state officials are serving to the nation. Now the government, it has closed its functions with regard of solid minerals, and now it gives everything for investors, local and foreign, and now in accordance with the current legislation. And in terms of the taxation, we also see some problems, and JK said, in terms of royalty payment and MET tax. So, in accordance with the 7th objective of UN, every state should have 3 positions: establishment of objectives, regulation, and control. And unfortunately, after the adoption of the code since 2018, no state control has been exercised, and the bright example of it, because of that, we got Bestabe mine. And here we have a problem that was raised by a president. It is a problem in the rationality and comprehensive extraction of minerals. And we have a lot of discussions on this issue. And also the Geology Committee wants KZRC to consider certain principles of rational comprehensive extraction of minerals. Now we have JKZ, and JKZ is the only authority that accounts rationality and comprehensive extraction of minerals. Unfortunately, the government does not coordinate and approve the plans of mining works, exploration plans. And here we have to ensure the completeness of surveying, coordination of mining plans. And the president also mentioned it during the parliamentary sessions when he was talking about efficient and rational use of minerals. KZRC is valid since 2016, and now about 80 reports have been received. And as for Jake, he said, I do not see any problem. This is the position of the government. Thank you, Reke. And now maybe we should leave the audience for lunch because everybody becomes hungry. Would you like to ask a separate question? I would like to ask the question to Georgie. You see that time has expired for the session, but still we have one question to George. Thank you. You are a huge enthusiast of CRISCA, and you have been working on the system for 10 years. Actually, the number of competent persons is about 300%. But why we face so many difficulties with CRISCA? And I am supportive to what Mr. Yorlan mentioned. Competent person assesses the resources better. And I must mention, if we increase MET tax rates and subsoil users will increase the cut-off grade. And if the resources are approved by Czechia, the subsoil users have to work. If a competent authority, one person, approves it, those who pay should work. And subsoil user is the one who pays, and they will work with a higher grade part.
The rational use of subsoil minerals, this is the wealth belonging to all the population, but not to one subsoil user. This is just a comment to your speech. We have to think about rational use of subsoils. Very important question, thank you. And that's the question. Actually, this question is under discussion almost all the time. What is the better approach? What is the proper approach, efficient approach in solving this issue? Because actually everything that can be extracted with profit, it should be done. The other thing is that the tax balance, the taxes are considered to be expenditures. So that's why here the approach should be very flexible in engaging all the participants, all the stakeholders of the process. That's why the issues was raised about the last statement, that there is a lack of certain preferences and so on and so forth. If there is an individual approach used, then many of the issues can be resolved. Extraction of the associated components, no matter what is the form of these components, it's very important, and it can be done if we motivate this process, if we stimulate this process, if we do it for everyone, today 1.5 times, next time 2 times increase, and that's it for everyone. It's not a proper approach. It's not a market approach. So that's why here we have to be very professional, multifold, and we have to calculate everything very carefully, estimate everything very carefully. I'm not the first person to mention it today. The State Revenue Committee, from the very beginning, they are stating from the very beginning, a transition to international standards, it's a bad thing for us. Not supporting it, not supporting this statement by any estimations or calculations. They haven't provided the proof of this statement, not at any meeting at any level. So that's their attitude. Okay, thank you, colleagues. I believe that with these words about CRISCA, GKZ, so barbarian extraction, and the development of the new code, please remember the challenges we have to expect that I presented in the first session, and let us be prepared for strict control in this area. Thanks.